right, did you make it through the Ba video from before, from yesterday maybe? It was quite a beast, and I have another one for you today that's very similar. We're going to just be one main point talking about another sentence structure called the Bei structure. So we had the Ba structure, here we have the Bei structure. Okay, so the Bei structure is the main way to make a sentence into passive voice in Chinese. So what is passive voice? Okay, so if you're not like a grammar person, what passive voice does is, this also sounds like a bunch of grammar speak. It takes like in a subject, in a sentence, you have something that does an action and you have something that receives the action. In a normal sentence, in most languages, in an SVO language, we're going to have the subject, which comes first, is the doer of the action, is the actor, and then we have a verb, and then we have an object, which is the recipient of the action. In a passive sentence, the word order will stay the same, but the subject becomes the recipient, and the object becomes the doer. And in English, this is usually accomplished by having a by in the sentence. Like a normal sentence, an active sentence would be, the boy kicked the ball. If we make that into a passive sentence, we switch around the actor and the recipient, and we say the ball, which is now the subject, was kicked, that's passive, by the boy. And in Chinese, we use, the main way to do that is to use bei. Here's a little formula for you. We have the subject, which is now becoming the object of the sentence, the recipient of the act, not the object, but the recipient of the action. So we have the subject, which is now the recipient of the action. We have bei, then we have the object, which is now the doer of the action, and we have something else tacked on there. Similar to the Ba structure, the bei structure requires something to come at the end there after the verb, essentially. No, actually, I missed something in this little thing. I realized when I was talking about the verb, we need to have a verb right here. So we'll throw that in there, plus object plus. Was that right? The ball was kicked by the boy. Bei object. Yeah, we need a verb. Plus a verb plus something. We need something after the verb, just like in the Ba structure. Okay, let me give you an example of how this looks. We have qianbao, that means wallet. So that is the recipient of the action now, but it is the subject of the sentence. qianbao bei xiaotou, that means, no, not xiaotou, xiaohai, child. xiaohai, tou le. qianbao bei xiaohai, tou le. This word-for-word translation is wallet bei child steal le. So wallet bei child steal le. In English, we'd say the wallet was stolen by the child. If we look at our little formula here, we have subject qianbao, bei the object, xiaohai, verb, tou, and then the something. We have a le there for that, to make that a completed verb. Also, I need to point out that just like in English, and in passive voice, we need to have a subject, but we don't always need to have an object. So when I say the wallet was stolen, that's a complete sentence. I don't have to say the wallet was stolen by the child. I can just say the wallet was stolen. In the same in Chinese, we can take away the xiaohai right here. Let me underline that. And we could say, qianbao bei tou le. qianbao bei tou le. We still have the bei to indicate its passive voice. And so we have the wallet bei stole le. Okay, so here's another example. 我被哥哥打了. So we have I bei, older brother, hit le, completion. I was hit by my brother, older brother. 我被哥哥打了. here we have and again we can eliminate the 哥哥，我被打了 I was hit, I was beaten. 糖果 candy 被弟弟吃光了 candy 被弟弟 little brother. So candy 被 little brother 吃光了. This is a verb and result complement to say that it was eaten all up, eaten till there was nothing left. 糖果被弟弟吃光了. So that and again we could take away the object, the Didi, who was the actor, and we could just say 糖果被吃光了. It was eaten all up. Here we have another example of an example of the object being removed, and this is in command form. 不要被骗. Do not. Remember, a negative command is 不要 or 别. 不要被骗. 骗 means to be cheated. So do not be tricked or cheated, or something like that. Okay, so just a little clue here that happens to work well in English. Bei and by, the English word by, like the ball was kicked by the boy, that by, they actually sound a little similar because bei by, and they so you can think of it as bei meaning that, but the difference is that when we drop the object from the sentence, you still have bei, but in English, when you drop the object, you drop the by. So they are a little bit different, but that's a little, it can be a helpful mnemonic that they actually kind of sound similar. Okay, so what does the Bei structure mean, other than making it just simply passive? Let's talk about it. It makes the focus. This is true of passive voice in English too. It makes the focus of the sentence about the it keeps the focus on the recipient of the action as opposed to who did the action. I found on prepscholar.com has this quote. Most people believe that the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, but this is not actually the case. Okay, so you see the passive was signed on July 4th. Now, why did the writer put it in the passive? Why didn't it talk about who signed it, make it active? Like these people signed it on, people believe that this list of people signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, but this is not actually the case. Why did they write it in passive voice? Because the writer wants to keep the focus on when it was signed, not on who signed it. And so they put it in passive tense, passive voice, which makes it the focus on the recipient of the action. Does that make sense? Usually, now this going back to only Chinese here, the Bei structure most often is used to express negative meanings. Notice that all of these are negative. You notice that? The wallet was stolen by the child. So that's negative, right? Like that's not a good thing. I was beaten by my brother. Not a good thing. 糖果, the candy, was eaten up by my brother. Eaten all gone. Also not a great thing if you like candy. And then we have do not 被骗. Do not be cheated. Don't get cheated. Okay, so all of them are negative. Now, it's not always true that bei expresses negative meanings, but it's used most commonly for that. And so that's interesting. Another thing is that bei tends to be used more often in writing than in spoken language. It is used in spoken language, but it's more often used in writing to be like to maybe clearly differentiate passive and active voice. Okay, and then it's also very convenient to talk about something happening to something without having to specify who did the thing. Like if I take away 小孩, 钱包被偷了. It's very convenient to say my wallet was stolen, as opposed, and I don't have to say by somebody or somebody stole my wallet. It's just convenient to talk about what happened rather than mentioning anything about who did it. Okay, so another thing I want to point out, and here I'll use this little guy to show you. We have, before you look at that, let me explain what I'm going to say. This is true in English and Chinese, though I think it might be more true in Chinese, is that sometimes you can use an active voice to express a passive idea. In English, let me give you an example in English. Do I have it written down? Yes. If I could say, the pen writes well. The meat keeps well in the fridge. Now, this is a little bit of a fuzzy way. It's not exactly 100% illustrating what I'm trying to say. But the pen writes well. It's like the pen doesn't actually do the writing. It doesn't write itself. So a person's hand has to do the writing. But we say the pen writes well, meaning that, it flows well or whatever. The meat keeps well. It's not actually it's like being kept, but it's talking about, so it's using an active voice, but expressing kind of a passive idea. Let me give you this example in Chinese. This is even clearer. 自行车修好了. So 自行车 means bicycle. 修好 means to be fixed and done. Like, it's like to fix with completion. 好, so it means like fixed, completed. And then la, of course, is just, in this case, is just completion in the sense of the verb has been completed. All right, so literally it says bicycle fixes la, or fixes finished la, or something like that. It doesn't have a bei, it doesn't have a passive word in it, but it is a passive idea, meaning that it has been fixed. Somebody fixed it. It didn't fix itself. The bicycle is not something that fixes other things. The bicycle has been fixed, but it's in this sentence. You would in spoken language you wouldn't put a bei in here. It's just those and these kinds of examples you really just have to kind of run into them and learn them. They're not something you can know by grammar. When this is okay to use an active voice to express a passive voice idea. I just wanted to point that out, that in both languages there are ways to do that. And then I want to also say, this is more for advanced students. This is a little bit of a jump, but there are other ways to express passive meanings in Chinese, other words other than bei. And they're actually used just like bei, they're just in place of bei. And they are, here's a little list, 让, jiao, and 给. So those three words can be used just like bei. The sentence order and structure would be the same, but instead of bei, you can use 让, jiao, and 给. Also in English, we have some other ways to express passive voice other than just the word by. We can say it got sold rather than it was sold. So like the traditional passive voice would be it was sold, but we can also say it got sold. We could say in Chinese actually has something like that too. 受伤 means to receive or get hurt. 受伤, and so it's a passive idea to get hurt, and it's 受伤 rather than 被伤. You don't say 被伤 or 被伤害, you say 受伤. So hey, language, it is awesome. It's so varied and robust, amazing. Okay, quickly, I'd like to go through a little list comparing the Bei structure from our last video and this Bei structure. They have some similarities and they have some obvious differences. Both of them emphasize the object and what happened to it, as opposed to what the object is and that kind of thing. So that's the similar. Both of them, I didn't mention this, but both of them need to have real action verbs, not abstract verbs like think or feel or to like, 喜欢. They all need to have real action words because they emphasize something happening to the object. One of the things that's different between them is that the object and the subject are switched around. In a Bei structure, it's like the normal way, in that the subject is the thing that does the action, the object is the thing that receives the action. In the Bei structure, those two things get flipped around, and the subject becomes the recipient of the action, and the object becomes the doer of the action. Ba needs to have a subject in the sentence. So ba needs to have a subject. If it's not there, it needs to be implied. Like we need to have know what the thing is that's doing the action. In the Bei structure, the object, which is the doer of the action, can be 100% omitted. And so we have no idea who did the thing. We just know what was done to the recipient of the action. I gotta really watch how I say these things. Okay, Bei is usually used for negative meanings. Ba does not have that connotation at all. Bei can be used without anything after the verb. Ba needs something after the verb. For example, 不要被骗. So I guess I should have put this over here. I should have put this in parentheses because it's not necessary to the structure. 不要被骗. So there's nothing after this verb. But in the Ba structure, something always comes after the verb. And Bei is more common in written Chinese, though it's used in spoken Chinese too. Ba is everywhere in both written and spoken Chinese. Okay, I hope you could follow all that. I hope it's fun. You are doing amazing. Learning Chinese is not easy, but you are doing it. Yeah!